So I would like to talk to you on the subject, how to be a real success. You see, if I could walk into your life right now, if we were just able to be together, and if I ask each one of you if you wanted to be successful, every one of you, you'd raise your hands and say, yeah, John, I want to be successful. But if I stop for a moment and ask you to define success, here's what I know. If we have a group of 100 people and ask that question, there would be at least 20, 25 different definitions of success. So when I'm talking to you today about how to be a real success, I don't want to assume that your definition perhaps is different than mine. We kind of want to get on the same page. So let me share with you, in teaching this lecture today, let me share with you what I think success is. I've worked very hard all my life to just come up with a definition of success that would be for everyone and would be lasting, and I think I have one. So I'm going to share it with you and see how it fits you, okay? You see, I think success is about three things. And I'm going to talk to you about those three things as a foundation for then the four things that you need to do to be a real success. I think, first of all, success is knowing my purpose in life. I think it begins right there. It's been said there are two great days in a leader's life, the day they were born and then the day they discovered why. Well, all of us had a day of birth, no doubt about that. But not all of us have had a day where we discovered our why. Why are we here on earth? And so people come to me all the time and they say, John, help me out. Help me discover my purpose in life. And I've really worked hard at doing that. And let's see if I can help you. I hope I can. That certainly is my goal for sure. I think to have a purpose path, there are two things that you have to consider. First of all, what is your passion? So whenever I put people on a purpose path, I say as you start taking this journey, look at yourself and ask yourself, what am I passionate about? Because passion is the great energizer. Passion energizes us. And whenever I see someone that is passionate, I know they're full of energy. I've never met a passionate person that lacked energy, just like I've never known a person who lacked passion that had energy. Passion and energy go together. When you have passion, you have energy. We hear often people talk about the fact, well, they're a high energy person, or well, they're a low energy person. And whenever they say that, I say, well, that's true. But another way to put it is they're a high passionate person, which gives them energy, or they're a low passionate person, which causes them to lack energy. So when I send you down this passion path to discover your purpose, I want to be real honest with you. It's not 100% accurate. It's about 70% accurate. And the reason I say that is because I know people that are very passionate about something, but they're not good at it, okay? When I was a kid, I was passionate about basketball, and I played basketball in high school, and I played basketball in college, but guess what? I wasn't going to play basketball in the NBA. I was passionate, full of passion, but that I wasn't skilled enough. I didn't have a strength to get to that level. In fact, when I hear people talk about follow your passion in life, I say, I want you to follow your passion in life, but I want you to understand that if it's not in an area of your strength, it's really not your purpose, and you won't excel in it. In fact, I tell people, if you're passionate about something that you're not really good at, make it a hobby, not a career. I think that's good advice. I think there are things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about golf, but I'm never going to be on the PGA Tour. But I still like to play golf. It's not a career for me. It's not a make or break, life or death. I don't have to play good golf to make money. In fact, when I play golf with guys and they kind of are upset with themselves and complaining, I look at them, I say, well, is this your livelihood? Well, of course not. It's not my life. Well, then relax, take a pill, okay? It's not going to make much of a difference. But passion is a wonderful thing because if you can do what you love, it has an energizing, sustaining part of it that allows us to carry on when others quit or give up. I can remember doing a conference, and it was a very successful conference, a couple thousand people there. I was teaching leadership all day. And it was toward the end of the day, I was in my last book signing session. And a young man came up to me and he said, "Oh, I've loved what you're doing today. And I've got my future in front of me." And he said, "I've decided that I'm going to do what you do. I want to do what you do." Well, I said, "That's great. Congratulations." I said, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure." He was very eager and he kind of leaned into me. I said, "The question's this. Would you like to do what I did so you could do what I do?" Now that's the question. Would you like to do what I did so you could do what I do? You see, we see people when they're excellent and they're successful and they're doing great things and say, "I want to do that." What you don't understand is there's a process to get to do that. You've got to did it before you do it. And there's a whole bunch of people, they want to skip the did in life. They don't want to did it, they want to do it. And can I tell you something? If you if you didn't did it, you won't do it. In fact, if you don't did it, you're in deep doo-doo, okay? Don't go into do without did. And passion gets you into the did successfully and keeps you going. And so people that did what I did to do what I do, they did it because they were passionate about it and it kept them in the game. That's an absolute fact. So when people say I'm discovering and looking for my purpose, I say, well, what are you passionate about? It's not 100% accurate, but it's about 70% accurate. It's a great place to start. But the second part of this path towards your purpose journey is 100% accurate, I promise you. You see, you not only ask yourself, what am I passionate about? You need to ask yourself, what am I good at? In other words, what is my natural strength zone? This is an accurate assessment. And the reason it's an accurate assessment of your purpose is because God created you for a purpose. And with that purpose that He created you, He gave you gifts to accomplish that purpose in your life. I love this. So don't miss this, okay? He gave you gifts to accomplish your purpose. In fact, I tell people all the time, work on your strengths. If you really want to be successful, work on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. Now, we were taught in school to work on our weaknesses. I mean, I can think back at all of my school days. If I got an A in math and a C in English, they'd say, well, work more on your English. Well, the reason I got an A in math is I had a math kind of giftedness more than a language giftedness. I say, don't work on your weaknesses, work on your strengths. Now let me explain why. You see, in the area of giftedness, strengths, and abilities, from a 1 to a 10, you can only improve yourself 2, possibly 3 numbers. So let's say I work on weaknesses. I'm just not very good at something. Let's say I'm a 2. That's not very good out of a 10. So I said, well, I've got to get that. I've got to raise my number. So I work really hard. And let's say I'm really good at raising my weak area. And I go from a 2 to 3 to a 4. Maybe, not sure, but maybe I even get to a 5. Now, guess what I've accomplished? I've accomplished average. 5 out of 10 isn't going to get me anywhere special at all. Average is average. And if you work on your weaknesses at best, when you finish, even if you excel, you're just average, and people don't pay for average. I don't pay for average. You don't pay for average. When you're hungry, you don't look at your friend and say, let's go to an average restaurant. Oh, come on. Are you kidding me? There's nothing appealing about average. I mean, except probably you can get a table in an average restaurant because nobody else is there. But you don't go to that average restaurant and ask the host or the hostess to, to seat you at an average table. Say, I don't want your best table, the one by the window overlooks the water. Give me an average table, and then send me an average waiter. When the average waiter comes to the average table at an average restaurant, you don't say, now, what's average here? And she said, well, I wanted to give you what, our specials? No, I don't want specials. So is there something very few people ever order? Come on. Now, that average restaurant that gave you the average table, that gave you the average waiter or waitress who now is giving you the average food. And by the way, when you're done with that average experience, you don't leave all excited and pumped and, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We got to come back to average again. No. The reason you have to discover your strengths and work on them. Let's say, for example, that I'm above average. I'm already a 6. Okay. Work on that 6. Here's what happens. If I'm already a 6, if I work on that, I could become a 7. Oh my gosh, I could become an 8. Now, we're starting to get somewhere when I'm an 8. And maybe I could become a 9. Now, let me tell you something. When you become people stand in line for 9s. When you get in that top 10%, now all of a sudden, you're going to be highly successful in life. So what I'm saying to you, very simple, is if you want to find your purpose, look at your passion. It's correct a lot of times, not every time. But if your passion matches your strengths, oh my goodness, then you're going to be absolutely amazing. I can tell you for a fact that that's exactly what I discovered, because I have a degree in counseling, and in my first few years of work, I did a lot of counseling. The good news is I had a degree in it. The bad news is I wasn't any good. Counseling wore me out. People's problems just kind of caused me to get real exhausted. And because I don't have great gifts of mercy, when they would come in and share with me the problem, I would say, oh my gosh, I can help you fix that. And here's 1, 2, 3. I'd write on the paper and tear off the paper and say, here, go be healed, and then I'd find out the next month they'd come back for another counseling session. I thought, oh my gosh, I thought I fixed them. I guess I didn't fix them. Here we go again. I was a terrible counselor. I'm not even sure when people finished with me in their counseling session that I helped them at all. In fact, I have a feeling they probably left my place and went to find another counselor that could help them. I wasn't any good at it. One day, I discovered that I was good at equipping. Now, equipping is opposite of counseling. Counseling is when I spend time with you and we're working on one of your weaknesses. Equipping is when we spend time together and I work on one of your strengths. I found I was really good at helping people with their strengths. I was really bad at helping people with their weaknesses. So I stopped counseling. Why? Because I was never going to be a great counselor, because that wasn't where I was gifted. I started equipping, and I'm now known as one of the top equippers in the world. We've literally equipped over 5 million leaders in every country of the world. We've got equipping down. That's what we do with our John Maxwell team. People like Phil, we're equipping them, certifying them to be John Maxwell team coaches and do great things for other people. So if you want to be successful, you've got to ask yourself, first of all, what is my purpose in life? And you find your purpose through passion. You find your purpose through strengths. The second part of success, it's not only knowing my purpose in life, secondly, it's growing to my maximum potential. Success is the ability to develop and grow myself to become the best I can possibly be. You see, the only guarantee that you and I have that tomorrow is going to be better than today is that we're growing today. My life was changed in the 20s when my mentor asked me if I had a personal plan for growth, of which I did not. And he said to me, John, growth is not automatic. And I began to be intentional in my personal growth. I wrote a book called The 15 Laws of Growth. I would encourage you, if you don't have it, to get it, because those 15 laws will teach you how to develop yourself and be a personal success in the area of your growth. You see, I also learned that the secret of my success is what I do daily. And this is what's incredible. In fact, I wrote another book called Make Today Count. And that's all about how to make the best of today so that you can guarantee that your future is going to be better. You see, when I wrote that book, Make Today Count, I knew that we over-exaggerate yesterday, we overestimate tomorrow, but we underestimate today. And so I teach a lot about the power of consistency, that consistency compounds, because that's exactly what consistency does. It compounds in your life and it compounds in my life. Wow. And when you personally grow, trust me, there is a fulfillment and satisfaction in your life and a capacity to grow more, because what does growth do? It increases capacity. See, I'm 73 and my capacity to grow is humongous because for 50 years I've had a personal plan for growth within my life. I was speaking at a conference and I had a gentleman come up at the end of the conference and he said, "This was life-changing, John." Well, he said, "What you shared today was life-changing." And then he said, "I wish I could have heard you 25 years ago." And I smiled and I said, no, you don't. He said, "Oh, no, yes, I do." He said, "I wish I could have heard you 25 years ago. Trust me." I said, no, you have to trust me. You don't want to have heard me 25 years ago. Now he's leaning into me and said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The things you've shared with me are life-changing." He said, "If I could have heard this stuff 25 years ago, think how further I'd be down the road." And I smiled and I said, "If you'd heard me 25 years ago, you wouldn't have heard these things you heard today." I'm growing. I'm learning. I didn't come out of my mother's womb with the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. My personal growth has allowed me to every day get better, increase, expand, improve. And that's what I want for you. And success, it's a progressive realization of your potential. And the way that you have progressive realization of your potential is each day commit yourself to personal growth. So success is knowing my purpose in life. It's growing to my maximum potential. Wow, this is huge. But it's one more thing. It's sowing seeds that benefit others. If there is a miss in success, it's over this third area. I think most people understand that with success, you've got to discover your purpose. I think people mostly understand that with success, you have to personally grow and develop. But I think when it comes to sowing seeds that benefit others, I think this is a big miss, because I think most people think of, instead of sowing seeds to benefit others, they think of reaping a harvest to benefit themselves. And now we're going to talk about something I think that is essential to your success: living beyond yourself. Somebody asked me how I determined the success of my day, and I said, well, that's very simple. I determine the success of my day by the seeds that I sow, not by the harvest I reap. It's the seeds I sow. Because here's what I know, and here's what I want you to know: there is no harvest without seed sowing. And yet so many of us, we get up and we haven't sown enough seeds to reap a harvest. And so therefore we get up and we say, wow, I hope somebody can make my day. And we look for somebody to do something for us. And we're on this receiving end instead of on this sowing, giving end. My life was changed when I heard Zig Ziglar say that if I would help people get what they want, they would help me get what I want. That was life-changing, because up until that moment I heard Zig say that, I had the opposite approach. I was like most people. I was saying to most people, help me get what I want. Get on my team. Get on my leadership train. Follow my vision. It was all about me, getting people to join my team. And all of a sudden Zig says, no. Do it the opposite way. It's not about you. It's about them. You go help other people succeed, and they'll help you succeed also. We all know that breathing keeps us alive. But there are two aspects of breathing. We breathe in, we breathe out. We breathe in, we breathe out. Now, what would happen if all of a sudden a person says, you know what, I just want to receive breath. I don't want to give breath. And so all of a sudden, excuse me, all of a sudden, we say, I'm just going to breathe in. And we just fill our lungs with the air. We just breathe in and we say, okay, I'm going to hold it. I'm not going to give out anything. I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to hold it. Well, we all know that we'll suffocate. The breathing process to keep alive says you have to breathe out and breathe in and breathe out and breathe in. And that's the way success is in life also. You've got to give out so that you can receive. That relationship has to be receiving, giving, receiving, giving, receiving, giving, receiving, giving. Just think of breathing the next time. So successful people are people that sow seeds. In fact, I define the difference between success and significance, and basically success is about me and significance is about you. And one of the greatest days of our life is when we understand that fulfillment comes in what we do for others, not what we do for ourselves. I know a lot, I'll bet you do too, I know a lot of highly successful people that are unhappy, very unhappy, very unfulfilled. Successful, yes. Big house, yes. Cars, yes. All the stuff they want, yes, yes. Very successful, but unhappy, unfulfilled. I know a lot of unhappy, unfulfilled, successful people. But when it comes to significance, when it comes to sowing seeds, when it comes to adding value, when it comes to giving, I know no one that lives in the significance lane. I know no one that is sowing seeds every day. Everyone that is sowing seeds that I know is greatly fulfilled. Not one of them are unhappy. Why? It's very simple. Because we were created to serve and give. That's why all of my life I've built a reputation on adding value to people. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to add value to you. And I've always asked myself, how can I add value to you? Not how can you add value to me? How can I give? Not how can I receive? How can I sow? Not how can I reap? And this is life-changing. In fact, I'm intentional in sowing seeds, and every day I do 5 things. Every day I value people, I value you. And if you value people, you'll add value to them, by the way. Every day I value people. Every day I think of ways to add value to people. Every day I look for ways to add value to people. Every day I do things that add value to people, and every day I encourage other people to add value to people. I do those 5 things every day. That is sowing seeds. And my friend, if you can do those 3 things, and now you think about it, you talk about a great definition of success. Knowing my purpose in life, growing to my maximum potential, and then, sowing seeds that benefit others. That's success. Now that we have defined it, and by the way, I would encourage you to spend some time on those 3 things I say is success and begin to intentionally live your life to flesh out those 3 areas. Truly, truly, you'll be successful. Many times people will come to me and they'll say something like, John, I would like to spend a day with you. I understand that thought. I understand that comment. They're really saying, John, I'd like to see what your day is really like. And, every day has a lot of things that are different about it. But that question and that thought brought me to a lesson I kind of want to teach you today called 5 things that I do every day. And the 5 things that I do every day, I would say, are the secret of my success. I've often said that your daily agenda, what you and I do every day, determines the level of our success. You let me spend a day with you, and I just need to hang. I really don't need to interact with you. I just need to watch you. If you gave me one day, I could promise you by the end of that day, with pretty good accuracy, I could tell you how successful you're going to be. Because there are certain things that you just pick up from spending a day with. I mean, if I have a day with you, I'm going to pretty well figure out what kind of attitude you have. If I spend a day with you, I'm going to figure out how well you prioritize. If I spend a day with you, I'm going to figure out if you're disciplined or not. I mean, it doesn't take long to find the things, the ingredients that make people successful. So when people say, well, John, if I spent a day with you, what would I see? Well, it depends. Some days I'm writing, some days I'm speaking, some days I'm in the studio like I am today. So my days are different. But there are 5 things every day that I do intentionally. Now, these 5 things, here's the good news. These 5 are so simple, every one of you can do these. This is not complicated, it's not hard, it's not difficult. They're all simple, but they are all powerfully successful if you do it. The key is action. You've got to do them. So let me give you the 5 things that I intentionally do every day. Number 1 is I learn every day. I have a capacity and curiosity to keep learning. I never have gotten to this place where, some people have this kind of, I've been there, done that kind of a mindset. Oh, I've been there, I've done that. Well, I've been a lot of places and I've done a lot of things. But been there, done that doesn't do anything to provide any kind of a growth for tomorrow. You see, the only guarantee that I have that tomorrow's going to get better today is that I'm growing today. And the only way that I can grow today is by learning. My mentor, John Wooden, had a great statement. He would look at me often and he'd say, John, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And what Coach Wooden realized is there's a whole bunch of people that they get stuck on know-it-all. They get stuck on the fact, I've been there and done that. And all of a sudden, they cease to be hungry to learn. They cease to have a desire to perhaps stretch in their capacity. And so just never lose that desire to read and to listen and to learn and to grow. A fun story. I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was speaking for a large company, and the CEO, I was in his office, and he had to leave the office for about 5 minutes. And I said, I'll just sit here and wait on you. And I looked up at his bookshelf, and he had a lot of my books. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. He has my books. He reads them. And so I thought I would surprise him. And, so I would maybe sign a few of them. So I reached up and picked one of them up and opened it up to sign it. And as soon as I opened it up, I thought, wow, this book hasn't been opened before. He hasn't read this book. So I thought I'd have some fun, and I just put his name there, and I just wrote the words, please read me. And then I signed my name. I stuck it up, pulled down another book, opened it up. I thought, oh, this one hasn't been read either. And so I put his name, and I put, please read me also. And I signed my name and stick it back up. And you can see where this one's going. I pulled down the 3rd book off the bookshelf, and it hadn't been opened. It hadn't been read. And so now I'm getting a little more desperate. So I put his name, and I said, please read me also. And then I put, when you do, call. And I put my cell phone number in there, and I signed it and put it back up, and he never called me. Okay. Now here's a person who was in a high position, but he stopped learning. There came a time where he somehow thought, wow, I know enough. I am enough. And I just want you to know that we don't know enough. So every day I learn. Every day, number 2 is I reflect. Reflection turns experience into insight. So when people say experience is the best teacher, that's just not true. Yeah, it's a common statement, but it's a stupid one, to be honest with you. If experience were the best teacher, everybody, as they had more experience, as they got older, they get better. And most people, they're getting older, they're not getting better. They've got more experience, but they've never evaluated the experience. You see, it's not experience that's the best teacher, it's evaluating the experience. It's out of the what did I learn from what I just did that really brings the fruit? So when my children were growing up, every week we would do different experiences. And they knew that I'd ask them 2 questions. If I asked my children this question once, I've asked them 10,000 times as they grew up. We'd finish the experience, and I'd look at them and say, hey, what did you love? What did you learn? What did you love? What did you learn? For a kid, they can tell you what they love a lot quicker than what they learned. And so I always ask it that way. And when my grandchildren came along, I've asked them now thousands of times, what did you love? What did you learn? What am I doing? I'm teaching them to evaluate their experience because awareness is huge. Listen, you have to know yourself to grow yourself. And one of the great mistakes we make in life is the fact that we're unaware. And so every day I reflect so I can increase my awareness. Every day every day I reflect, every day I learn, every day I write. You say, well, of course you write every day, John. You're an author. You're a writer. No, I write every day because writing does 2, maybe 3 things for me that are essential for my development. One is I write, whenever I get a good thought, I write it down. In fact, today I was doing an interview and a podcast, and the person I was interviewing, in fact, it was Don Yeager, he said something that was very important. So right in the middle of the interview, I'm getting my iPhone out and I'm writing down his thought as quote because I don't want to lose it. So I write to capture the thought. I also write to clarify the thought. Writing brings clarity to a thought much better than just listening. And there's something about when you see it, that it just becomes more clear. And I also write to create the thought because what I've found is once I start writing a thought down, many times it leads to another thought. You know, a great idea is an accumulation of several good ideas. And so every day I write. I write so I can capture the thought, clarify it, maybe even create another thought. Every day, number 4, I share. It's very important for you to take what you're learning and pass it on to others. And it's very important for you to talk your thought out. There's something magic that happens with sharing your thought. 1 + 1 equals, if you have a good thought and you share a good thought with me, and I have a good thought and I share it with you, the natural thing is to say we have 2 good thoughts, but usually that stimulates another thought. 1 + 1 equals 3 in sharing. There's a compounding that once that we begin to verbalize. And so there's a beautiful thing about sharing that thought. And then every day I not only share the thought, I sustain the thought. Every day I work on continually thinking about what I learned. The true experiment, they put 10 people in a room and they give them a thought. They give them an idea and they said, we want you to take that idea and maximize its potential. An hour later, they go into the room with 10 and they've taken the idea and obviously they're sharing and it's gotten better. And then they remove 5. It doesn't matter which 5 they remove. Doesn't matter at all. It could be the smartest 5, the dumbest 5. I don't care. And they give the last 5 one more hour to think upon that idea 100% of the time. At the second hour, the idea has gotten better. Why? It's because it's been sustained. It was held on long enough to really develop. So every day I sustain my thinking. Every day I share my thinking. Pretty much every day I write my thinking. Every day I reflect my thinking. And yes, every day I learn so I have something to think upon. Simple, isn't it? You can do that.
And that goes right into the 5th point that John makes in today's lesson, that Coach Wooden paid attention to fundamentals and detail. I mean, John does a book. He's written a book for network marketing. He teaches all the time about the rule of 5. The 5 fundamentals, and we know John's because we've talked about it on this podcast before. Every day I read, every day I write, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions. And John goes through this whole routine. He does it every single day. But you see coaches, great coaches, Coach Wooden certainly, great leaders, they figure out the fundamentals of what success looks like. They do those every day, and they allow themselves to have patience for the fundamentals to effectively and eventually pay off. I know for me, Don, as you know, I started as a telesales person. Picking up phones, dialing. I can still tell you to this day for 2.5 years, every day, what made that day was successful. It was 70 dials, which would lead to 25 people that I would speak with, which led to 5 people out of those 25 that would say, yes, we'll come to a John Maxwell event. You know why I can give you those numbers and I hadn't done that for 18 years? Because the fundamentals of every single day going through that activity It's what yielded results, and those results yielded to being promoted, and being promoted led to what I get to do today, and that's sit here with you, Don, and talk leadership. I go back to the fundamentals of success. Now, talk to me about what you noted in your time with Coach Wooden about the fundamentals of business, of the fundamentals of leadership.
So this is so directly on point, Mark. One of my favorite conversations with Coach Wooden one day was I was talking to him about practice plans around like how do you make sure that you're getting, because again, remember there's a limited amount of time you're allowed to practice, and so you want to make sure that everything happens in fat and speed and order, right? And you want to make sure that the players are moving from one place to another so that everything you're trying to cover is mastered at that time. And Coach Wooden had in his condominium one of those old library file boxes, right? You know, like when you used to go to the library way back in the day and you'd look
Yeah.
at cards that would tell you where the book could be found. And in there, he had the practice plan for every day that he coached. He kept the plan, but they were they
Wow.
were they were 4x6 cards, and on it he had everything listed. And he did on day 81 of the season in 19 whatever year, he would do the exact same thing on day 81 the next year and the year after that. But every year he was always looking to improve it. So he had disciplines, he had structure to what he did, and that gave everyone confidence that he knew what he was doing, and it gave him security to build upon a strong foundation. You're not trying to recreate the wheel every year. And I love that. And I think that that was a huge learning point for me. Develop those foundations, develop those 5 things you do every day, develop whatever it is for you, and then rinse, repeat, right? Rinse, wash, repeat, right? Do it. And each and every time you get to, you begin that process, you just get more confident. You just get better. You just get stronger. And those around you gain more confidence in you.
It's brilliant, Don. Podcast listeners, I know we're going to get all kind of comments from last week and this week because it's brilliant how you're bringing this to life. We've all said this. This is cliche, right? Success is not an accident. Oh, it's so easy to say that. But when you talk about a coach that chronologically laid out and recorded what he did in practice every single day, every single week, so he could go back and reference it the next year to improve on it. Success is not an accident, podcast viewers, podcast listeners. You are going to have to be consistent.
Speaking of marriage, the past you can't lead people past the level of my commitment, which talks about sacrifice.
Right. Yeah. So it's saying here, John said, like, seldom will followers sacrifice more than leaders. Can you explain? I think sacrifice is a scary word for people, and especially if you've never heard that as it relates to business or your work. Or can you describe a little bit what you think that looks like and what that might mean for a leader?
Well, so one of the greatest ways that John illustrated, and I lived this out before I'd ever heard John talk about this, but he tells about his nephew that had started a job, and he went in there and he asked his nephew who wanted to climb the ladder as quick as possible. And he said, "Hey, let me ask you a question. What time's start time?" The nephew answered, "Oh, it's 8 o'clock." He said, "Not for you. It's 7:30. And he said, "Oh, how long do you have for lunch?" And he said, "An hour." Isn't that great? They give an hour. He said, "No, not for you. That's 30 minutes. He said, finally, he said, "What time's quit time?" He said, "Oh, it's 5 o'clock. And he said, "No, not for you. It's 5:30. And then he began to walk him through, here's what you need to do. The first week, you need to request a meeting with the top leader. And you need to go in and say, here's my cell phone. If you ever need anything, I'm here to help you. Wash your car, take your laundry." Some people call that kissing up. That's okay. What I call it is being willing to give up to go up. It's the law of sacrifice. And so for me, in my application, when I first started working alongside John on our team, he won't let me say working for him. When I started working, I was living 52 miles away in Atlanta. Look at this scary face, those of you watching. That's terrible, especially on a Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
Friday evening, you leave at 5, you get home at 7:30 if you're lucky. So I just determined 2 things. One, I was going to get to work a lot earlier, and I was going to leave a little later in the name of beating traffic or missing traffic, but in the anticipation that I would demonstrate a sacrificial work ethic that would attract people to give me opportunity. And it worked. The second thing that I would tell you is it would get really easy to listen. There's some pretty good radio stations in Atlanta that's pretty entertaining. I like music. I like to be entertained. It would have been a time to be entertained.
Right.
I just determined I was going to sacrifice entertainment and invest in myself. In other words, a leader looks at what is required and does more. A leader looks at what is expected and exceeds that. And so I think that's what John is saying here. Seldom will followers sacrifice more than leaders, because if the standard is this, a leader's always trying to raise that standard.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And it kind of leads right into the next one, which is really discipline. So
Right.
that one's kind of like sacrifices, thinking outside the box of how you can show that you show up differently, but then not just once or twice, but the discipline of showing up regularly that way, consistency. John jokes around a lot about how that's such, he gives a big show about how consistency is such an unsexy word. But what are the most common missteps? Now you're the CEO of all of John's world, and now you've taken that baton and you are running with it. Your word.
Yep.
But what would you say are the most common missteps that you see with leaders, not just team members, but leaders living an undisciplined lifestyle?
Well, I think a lot of times when you reach the prize or you reach a success level, you feel like you can give up the things that's taken you there. And I've heard it said, and I'm going to address this in just a moment, what got you here won't keep you here.
Right.
And that's a true statement. I'll talk about that in a moment. But in some times, that is a misrepresented statement. What got you here is what's going to keep you here and take you to the next level. There's a hunger that I'll see in people climbing a ladder or pursuing position or trying to get there that somehow subsides when they have achieved it. There's a willingness to serve others until you feel like you've reached a position that you want to be served.
Yeah.
Well, I think the discipline of servant leadership applies even more the higher your influence in an organization. And most people lose the discipline. They serve to get, not serve to give.
Yeah.
I'm serving you because I hope for something back, rather than I serve so that I hope that you get what you're wanting to accomplish. And so a lot of times you'll find the disciplines of getting up early, getting in the office before everyone else, that begins to subside when you have the privileges and the perks, and you kind of come in when you want to. You kind of do what you would like to do. I believe sacrifice should be felt more the higher you accomplish your dream and the higher you achieve success in an organization. You should feel the responsibility of sacrificing more. Why? Because you're more visible. It will compound influence. If you'll visibly sacrifice more, it'll encourage others. I think the other reason that we need to discipline ourselves to sacrifice more is our position already creates a barrier of connectivity. People don't tell you, boss, what you need to hear. John told me many years ago, he said, Mark, when you become the CEO, you will no longer be coined as bringing a bad decision to the table. Now, you will bring bad decisions to the table. Everybody go, oh, Mark, that's the best idea. And they're gagging underneath all that best idea. And so when we keep an attitude of discipline and sacrifice, we limit the success gap that sometimes comes to those that have had great accomplishment inside of an organization.
I think that's a lot in line with what John has talked about for years, about believing your own press.
Yeah.
And I think it's really the way we've conditioned and how it's been, where you know that if you work so hard, you get the car, you get the house, you get all the things that you're wanting for yourself as you are climbing a ladder. And then once you get there, it's very hard for some people to have the mentality of like, now you get the perks, you get the front line to park your car and the spot and the big office and all that kind of stuff. And what you are talking about, what John has been talking about, is that you don't ever allow yourself to get in that mindset to be the fancy guy. So what is that tension, and how does a leader starting out who is really hungry, what are the things that they say to themselves so they don't fall into the trap of trying to get to that place where then they can have the front park in the front and have the big office? What is that tension? Because you do have a nicer office and there are perks. So what is that tension that you tell yourself as a young leader so you don't plan to get comfortable there?
Well, I think all of us as rising leaders and all of us that lead people that want to be a rising leader, we really need to do a heart check. What is the desired outcome for me personally by accomplishing that achievement, that position? What is it really? That I want to tell people what to do, that I want to be the big cheese, that I want a nicer car? If you can uncover within yourself motive that really indicates that you are the one that wants to be the best benefactor of your success, you're going to have a problem. You really are. I've seen some people that were very self-motivated in their benefit that has risen and discovered a better way down the road. But most people that rise with that as their agenda, self-benefit, will have a short shelf life. But if people really want that and have that aspiration so that it will benefit others and so that they can use that greater influence, that bigger platform for the benefit of raising up additional people or are doing good for the world, you're going to find somebody that's a lot more sustainable for you to invest in, because they're not going to get up there and crash and burn. They're going to get up there and continue climbing.
And the team's going to be able to tell.
That's
the
right.
team will be able to tell if your motive is for all the gain to be for you. And it doesn't have to just be just the team. I mean, John will say it's great when it's a win-win, when there's
That's
a benefit to you. It leads right into number 5 where he talks about willingness to serve. Are you serving the team as a leader, or are you just serving yourself? So one of the things I thought was so interesting when he talked about you don't know if you have if that you're bankrupt until you're bankrupt, which I thought was such a great way of putting it, and the way he led up with the change in your pocket and all of that stuff. So I would love for you to expand on that just a little bit in closing. But also one of the things that he said was he was talking about, I took a note about it, but he was talking about people who, they get to the end and they're bankrupt.
Yeah.
But how often have you seen, how common is it when they get to that point and they have no more change in their pocket with people and they have missed their way? Is it common for people to acknowledge it and start back up again, or do they just kind of trail off? What if there's a leader listening and they're like, I'm bankrupt. I used up all the change in my pocket, and I now need to start basically from scratch with my people because I'm bankrupt with them.
Yeah, well, number one, I am a leader that was bankrupt. I tell my story. I was bankrupt emotionally, financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was bankrupt when I joined John 22 years ago. So I am a living testament that the answer to your question is yes, people can wake up and be bankrupt and start over again and have even greater impact in all those major categories that's important in our lives: emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially. So the answer is yes. I think what I want to go with the question that you asked, though, is what do we put in our life to safeguard
that's great.
losing too much change in our pocket? Because John's analogy, and I don't know why I've never heard this before, but he said losing change. He said he feels sorry for the people that are losing change, but they still think they have it. They've lost all the change in their pocket, but they still walk around as if they've got it.
Right.
And isn't that really sad?
Yeah.
Most people, when you get bankrupt, you realize I'm bankrupt. But imagine the individual that still thinks they've got all of that, and the position is masking that they have no influence capital in the organization. And my heart went out to that because I want some of us, especially young leaders that are climbing quick, I want you to put in safeguards that will help you not lose the change in your pocket before you realize it. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind there. One is asking people what it's like to be on the other side of me. Liz Wiseman, my friend, helped me realize that in her book, Maximizers. What is it like to be on the other side of me? I think the other is getting a inner circle that has the ability to speak clearly and certainly in your life. Here's what I mean by certainly. Too many people have people around them that when and if they do speak up, they make it so negative of an experience to those that spoke up that they'll never do it again. When people give you the gift of critique, you need to hug them, you need to buy them dinner, you need to do something for them so that they will keep doing that for you. They may not be right. I've had people give me critique often that they're not right. Even though they're close to me, they're just not right because they're not seeing more and before as the leader does. They're seeing it from where they are rather than where I am.
Right.
However, the day that I discount critical feedback from an inner circle member is the day I can count the number of days that I'm not going to have critical feedback in the future because people won't keep doing it. So I would get these questions, what is it like to be on the other side of me? I would empower an inner circle to begin processing that.
When I said, Tracy, John has been doing the last week or so, he's been doing this lesson that is absolutely one of the best lessons I've heard in a long time. And I get to hear John quite often. And the lesson is simply this, podcast viewers, podcast listeners. It's called the Success Stabilizers. Success Stabilizers. Now, isn't it true that you're listening to this podcast today, you're viewing this podcast today because you want some success in your life? That's what we found. We found that over 90% of the people that interact with Maxwell Leadership, they come for inspiration and skills resources to become better. So chances are 9 out of 10 of you are tuning in today because you want to be inspired with something, some nugget that will help you be a little more effective, a little more successful in your leadership. And so John says, but then when we become successful, something happens. We don't keep success in a proper perspective as leaders. We begin to let success be a little more inflated in its value, or we let success be a finish line that doesn't propel us with that success into significance. Success is what happens to us. Significance is what happens through us. And so John's doing this incredible teaching called Success Stabilizers. Now, it's his lesson, so I'm going to let him teach it, but I'm going to give you 2, and then I'm going to give you the third one that's very apropos. It's very relevant to today's podcast. The first characteristic, or one of the things that really comes with success, is a bit of an ego. A bit of a swag, a little bit of a confidence to our step, right? I mean, Tracy, I see it.
Okay, I really hope that you are going to tune in and watch this on YouTube.
I gave some moves
Mark
there.
Just did. He kind of ventured into dancing almost.
Yes.
I'm not sure what that was, but I'm not sure it was ego, but it was a little bit of a dance. A swag was.
Podcast listeners, don't tune in because very quickly you're going to understand I have a face for radio and I have a voice for the mute button. So do not tune in.
But you've got dance moves that they've just got to see.
Yes. So it's this concept that, yeah, with a little bit of success, we get a little bit of an ego. We get a little bit of a confidence that if we're not careful, if it's not stabilized, we will allow that to become a detriment to our success rather than something that extends our success into significance. And so the stabilizer to ego is humility. We've got to constantly stay in this place of humility. That's why, Tracy, thank you for complimenting a while ago when I say John told me just yesterday, hey, Mark, such a great job on stage. Thank you very much. And I go, John, man, I don't know that I deserve this. I want to always, Patrick Lencioni, our friend, says that one of the key attributes of a great leader is humility. Humility, hunger, and a desire with skill sets and strengths. And I want to keep that humility. And John says that's a stabilizer to ego. He said, second thing that comes a lot of times with success is money. So another characteristic of success is we allow monetary things, money, bank account growth, and nicer cars or things to indicate success.
Well, money has a stabilizer in generosity. Don't show me how much money you have in your bank account. Don't show me your W-2 at the end of the year. Show me your giving statement. Because if you can continue to have this feeling of generosity, and by the way, a lack of money exposes generosity as well. I've met a lot of people that said, hey, when I make $1 million, I can't wait to give $100,000, $200,000 away. And I go, well, how much are you giving now? And when the answer is zero, I say, no, $1 million in the bank, $1 million of income is not going to make you more generous. It's going to make you more selfish. So a stabilizer to money is generosity. But then we go to the one, and I did teach a little bit of John's lesson. Still tune in because he's a lot better. But then we go to this stabilizer for another characteristic of success, and that is pride. There's a true, I believe, healthy pride. Something that really can make you and I thankful, appreciative, even respect the effort put into success, a sense of healthy pride. I certainly have that for my daughter, Macy, right now. She's just like killing it in some areas that I'd love to have more podcast time to tell you all about. There's a healthy pride, I hope it's healthy, that's there. But when you get success and you have this sense of pride in your accomplishments, you need a stabilizer. And that's where today's lesson comes in, Tracy, because the stabilizer to pride is gratitude. Is the sense that I don't stand here alone. I stand on the shoulders of those that's gone before me. I don't stand here because of my accomplishments. I stand here because Javon and Jake in the studio with me is making this podcast what it is. Just the other day, Tracy, I was on a flight coming back to Atlanta, and somebody just kind of greeted me and like almost this, I know you, how are you doing? We had masks on as we do, still traveling, and there was just this brightness in his eyes, and I went, I think I might be supposed to know this person, and anyway, we flew on and didn't say anything. Well, we get off the plane, I had a problem with my bag, and she came up, she said, hi, my name is Sarah, and you're Mark Cole, and I know this because I view the podcast. And I went, wow. And by the way, Sarah, it was so good to see you on that flight. I wish I had more time to hear your story. But I went, wow, that's because of Jake. It's because Jake showed up this morning. Mark, don't get so caught up that there's a visual representation of the podcast that somehow means that Tracy and I are the drivers of the podcast. I stand here today, I'm actually sitting, but I sit here in the studio today, as you do, Tracy, able to communicate hopefully value to you on the podcast because an army of women and men. I sit in the seat of CEO in the organization because Linda Eggers, not John Maxwell, Linda Eggers saw and appreciated the value of my leadership and put in a good word to the big man. She's been John's assist. She's been on John's team for over 30 years. And when Linda speaks, everyone listens. And when Linda told John, you need to check this guy Mark out that's been on the team for about 3.5 years, John began to see opportunities for me to continue climbing in the area of success. I never want to forget. I want my success today to be stabilized with the gratitude to Linda Eggers, to Jake, to Javon. I want to always stay stabilized in any successful things that I experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that maybe if you're listening, sitting here in this chair, not in the same room with Mark, but feeling like we're in the same room.
Yeah.
And I always sit in this podcast and I take notes to myself. If you're watching, you see me looking down sometimes as Mark is talking because I'm learning right alongside of you. And I learn and I grow when Mark shares his application. And as he did, there were just a couple things that I want to share before we close out this podcast that really stood out to me that maybe will stand out to you as well. So I have been trying to practice what's in John's books, as Mark has, as many of you have listening in and watching on this podcast. But some of you, I'm sure, beginning, or maybe maybe this is gratitude is something that has been a sticking point for you, or an area you want to grow even more in, I know that generosity is something that I really pursue. I want to be known for generosity, and I would assume you probably do too, or gratitude. But two G words. I'm looking down because I wrote generosity. Let me just say, so if you're thinking that you want to pursue humility and generosity more, and whether or not that's just starting to put that more into your life, or something that you want to like really cultivate and have more and more of that in your life, how you activate that more. John really hit on that in his in the notes. So I hope that you print those notes out. But I heard something one time that really stuck with me, and I've tried to apply it, and I'm going to share it with you. They said, forget what you've, keep a short account of the wrongs others have done to you. And that's on forgiveness, of course. But the flip side of that, what's applicable today, is it said, keep a short account of the rights that you've done, the right things you've done for others, the times when you've been generous. Because sometimes when you're generous with others, that you can tend to keep a running tally in the back of your head of maybe what people owe to you. So generosity can have this weird flip side of, if you do something kind for someone, you can think, well, they owe me because I've done this for them and I've done that for them. So not only should we keep a short record of the wrongs people have done for us, but we should keep a short record. Part of being generous is keeping a short account, a short memory of the right things we've done and the generous things we've done for others. And then the other things that he highlighted, that John highlighted, was keeping a gratitude journal. You know, if you're somebody who struggles with maybe a grumpy attitude sometimes, or when we all hit lows in our lives, it's nice to have a gratitude journal that you can go to and open up and look at all the times, the things that you are so grateful for. When your brain is tempted, when your mind and your emotions are tempted to really focus on the things that you are struggling with, and when you go to those things that you're grateful for and you read through them and you look through them, it just buoys your spirits. It makes you feel better. It makes you remember the real things in your life, not just these temporal things that are just popping up right now, because we're all going to have hardships. But really keeping a gratitude journal is something that I think is we're way less apt to complain if we really train our brains and put in habits, healthy habits of gratitude into our life. And so I'll let you close it out, Mark, but I'm just wanting to help all of us to, the key takeaways for me from this podcast is, are we practicing what John has put into his books? That alone helps us to be more grateful people, because he is such a grateful person.
Now, I'm going to talk to you in a moment about some other words. And I'm going to teach you what we call in the John Maxwell Team Company, the circle of success. It's a cycle. It's a cycle of success. And it has 5 words in it. So these are words that we're adding to the words that you need to know today to maximize your potential right now so you can prepare yourself for the future. So let's go through these words. The first word in our circle of success in our John Maxwell Team, which is our coaching company that we hope that you'll become a part of, the first word is test. And whenever we test all the time, by the way. And whenever we're testing, what we're really saying is, we know there's a better way. When we're testing, we're saying we know that there is always an answer. And maybe we don't have the answer yet, and maybe we have a way, but it's not the best way. Testing means there's just a better way. And by the way, I was talking to someone the other day, a leader, about the coronavirus and our crisis that we're in. And I said to him, this is the greatest day of testing I've ever seen in my life, because people are so fearful, they're so panicked, they're so uncertain that you can test anything right now and you can get by with it. Because we're hearing all kind of predictions. Some of them are true, some of them are not true, some of them are really way out. I mean, you could say, start throwing mud on the wall. Nobody, during safe, secure times when you want to do something a little different, people say, wait, what are you doing? We've already figured out how to be successful, which you haven't, but you think you have. But during times when you're in the deepest valley and it's the darkest, people will let you test. In fact, they're willing to test. They're just throwing mud on the wall saying, what's going to stick? What will work? So there's never been a better testing time than right now. In fact, as I'm doing this teaching to you, literally last month, Just through social media, we reached 1.6 million people in my teaching. Last year, in personal appearances, I only reached 1.2 million. In other words, in 1 month, hey, by testing, by doing something totally different than what I've done before, I reached in 1 month more than I reached an entire year last year. That's the beauty about throwing it out there, testing it. I had a mentor for several years, a wonderful man. His name was Bill, and he would come to me, and he would, many times in our conversations, look at me and say, John, when's the last time you did something for the first time? He was trying to keep me creative. He's trying to keep me testing and getting out of the box and staying curious. When's the last time you did something the first time? Now, when he was asking you that question, he was talking about what are you adding to your life that you don't have in your life that's going to make you better? That's what that question's all about. Well, I have a question for you today. When's the last time you did something for the last time? Yeah. When's the last time you did something for the last time? In other words, you said, that didn't work any better. That didn't work anymore. That doesn't satisfy me. Now, that's all about subtraction. Bill's question was addition. When's the last time you did something for the first time? In other words, what are you creating and building? But I'm asking you, when's the last time you did something for the last time? What are you losing? What are you letting go? So what are you getting rid of so that you can be better tomorrow? What's held you back? When I turned 17 and knew that I was going to be a speaker all of my life, my father, who, by the way, is still alive today, he's 98. My dad, who is also a speaker and very, very successful, said to me, John, if you're going to be a good speaker, he said, you got to put well in the water so that whenever you go to the water, you have water. You go to the well, you have water to pull out. In other words, he said, you got to resource yourself well. And he told me, he said, file every day, read every day. And so at 17, I started reading and filing every day and literally have done it all my life. Just a few years ago, about 5 now, I was looking at those filing cabinets with thousands of articles that had been written and tens of thousands of quotes. I mean, if you do it every day and you do it for, 50 years, after a while, you just become pretty amazing. And I would go to those files when I was going to write or book or teach on a subject, and I'd pull out material and I'd get it and I would use it. And one day I began to realize I was relying way too much on those files, that I wasn't as creative and I wasn't testing what I should be testing, because I had a safety net. I go over there and, well, here I got this. And I was starting to read old thoughts, and old thoughts are old thoughts. They're not relevant. They're not new. They're not fresh. They don't breathe. There's no fire and passion in them. And I made a decision, a very difficult decision, all of my work for all those years of filing. I made a decision to get rid of all of it. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my wife, Margaret, because I was afraid I would back out. And to be honest with you, this is a huge step for me. I can still remember, we were living in a condo. I can still remember the day when Margaret was gone, and I looked over those files, and I called up one of the service people, one of the bellmen there at the place where we stayed, and I showed him those cabinets. I said, I gave him $200. I said, I'm going to do me a favor, get rid of those. I'm going to be gone for 2 hours. Just, I don't care what you do with them. You can, dump them, do whatever you want, but just, I don't want them here when I'm back. And so I took my time and left for a couple hours, came back, and he had done exactly what I asked. The cabinets were all gone. And then all of a sudden, I looked and I saw all of my work that I had expended, and I literally, where those cabinets were standing, I sat down right there and I wept like a baby for 15 minutes because I realized I had just let go of so much of what I had held on to. Now, I'm just going to say to you, one of the good things about a crisis is it begins to help us to let go of the things that we have depended on the past so that we can go to an entire new level of living. I'm more creative today than I would have been if I'd have had those files. I test more than I would have been because what? That was a crutch to me. I was holding on to what I knew instead of letting go so I could grab hold of what I could become. So that's a huge word right now. Just be testing. That it's going to make you the person you need to be during this time. Okay. We're back to the cycle, the circle of success. Test is the top. And then fail. Testing says that there's a better way, and failing says, I haven't found that way. You test and you oops, I thought that might work. It didn't work. But let me tell you something. Failing tells you that, I haven't found that way, but it also tells you, but I'm getting closer to finding that way because I've just tried something that I found didn't work. It's the Thomas Edison thing. It's old, it's worn, but it really is greatly true. And when he said about the incandescent light bulb, and he had over 9,000 tests and failures, and he said, I'm just 9,000 steps closer to discovering and getting what I want to have. What he knew is you if you test a lot, you're going to fail a lot. That's just the way of doing it. Wow. I wrote a book called Failing Forward several years ago. And I just love the title of the book because it was giving the picture of failure, yes, but when we failed forward. In other words, wow, we made an advance. Okay, we have to get back up, but if you're 5.5 feet every time you fall, you get back up. You could have gained 5.5 feet, and the failing forward is a beautiful picture of the fact that I'm testing, I'm failing, but I'm getting better even in the process of that. And one of the things I teach is the fact that you're never good the first time. I'm always amazed when people come to me and they say, well, I'm really working hard. I'm really practicing here. I've never done this before. I'm writing my first book. Oh my gosh, I really want it to be a great book. And I look at them and I want that for them too, but that's not reality. I guess in a fatherly way, I try to pull them aside and just help them understand that this is true of me, this is true of you. It's true of all of us. We're never good the first time, but we just aren't. We want to be good. We practice to be good, but we haven't done it enough to be good yet. If you're trying to develop a skill, the first time isn't a good time. It's a difficult time because you've never done that before, and it's okay. And that's part of this process of testing and failing that we're never good. I just finished last week what will become my 4th book. And it's entitled Change Your World. It's not going to be out for about a year. But I worked so hard on that book. And I rewrote it. Hang on. Me and my writing team rewrote the book 6 times. Yeah, we did. There was the first time, and it was okay. So we said, okay, now what? Let's start upgrading. So the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. Now I'm not a novice writer. I've been an author for since 1979. I've got writing down pretty good. I really do. 6 times. 6 times. I don't want us to miss this. That the more we test, the more we fail. But what I really don't want us to miss is the fact that that's part of this process, and that testing and failing have got to be linked just like success has to be linked to them. And I'll come back to that in a moment because right now, wow, I love sports and we're all going crazy with the quarantine and no sports basically. And I'll be honest with you, I don't love sports enough to watch the 1987 Collegiate National Championship basketball game. Honestly, once it's over, it's kind of over for me. So I'm not watching much sports. And so what are we all doing on ESPN? We're watching the Last Dance with Michael Jordan. Yeah, we are, because it's at least it's fresh material, and what an incredible athlete he was. But here's what I love about Michael Jordan. You saw the advertisement, I'm sure, sometime in your life. Probably the greatest basketball player ever. And what does he say? In one of his commercials, he said, I've missed over 9,000 shots. I've lost 300 games, and the 26 times I've missed the game-winning shot. In fact, Michael Jordan probably has missed more game-winning shots than any person that ever lived, and yet he's probably the greatest basketball player that ever lived. And what do I want to teach you out of this? It's very simple. You cannot, you will not, you should not, you never should separate failure from success. They're inseparable. There is no one that has ever been successful without having a lot of failure in that journey. It's just part of the path you take. And somehow we've tried to isolate it and put success over here and failure over here and say, these two things that they should never meet again. Wow. Don't separate them. They belong together. In fact, it's out of our failures that we have a humility that allows us to have a great center that allows us to take that success and be more balanced in it. And it's just you've got to go through failure to get to success. You just have to. There's no other. You don't bypass failure and say, I don't want failure and disappointment. I just like to get to the no. You got to go through it. You got to go through failure to get to success. So we're learning some words that are maximizing us right now. Test, fail. Here's the next word, learn. And by the way, the value of failure is that you're learning something from it. So when anybody talks about failure in their life, the question I always ask them in that failure is, talk to me. What have you learned? Because that's absolutely huge. What have you and I learned? And what are you and I learning through the coronavirus right now, through this crisis? What are we learning? You know, in the Peanuts cartoon, Charlie Brown, he's at the beach and he's spent the whole day and he's carefully built a pretty amazing castle in the sand, and he's standing back and he's looking at it and he's just admiring it. And all of a sudden, the big waves come in and a storm comes in and just goes over the castle and engulfs the whole castle. And all at once, all of his artwork, all of his time, all of his effort, it's all just with one wave washed away. And he's standing now before where this castle was, this just smooth place of sand, and where his artwork stood, it's all gone. Everything's gone. And he's saying to himself, yeah, there must be a lesson here, but I don't know what it is. Well, that's Charlie Brown. He always knew there was a lesson. He just wasn't sure what it was. Well, in this time of crisis, there is a lesson. But you want to advance a little bit beyond Charlie. You want to stay with it long enough to ask yourself, what am I learning from it? Wow. I'm learning a lot from it. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm learning that I need more time for creativity than I've given it. I'm at a max creative time in my life right now, but I know why. It's because I have time to be creative. I need to have some margins in my life for my health. This has been good for me. I'm learning. I'm having to make changes. I know you are too. I know you are. Let me give you another word that will help maximize us during this crisis, and that is the word improve. Yeah. And by the way, just like the value of failure is that we learn from it, the value of learning is that we improve out of it. If learning by itself there's not much value in learning. I mean, if you want to know something, just get on your iPhone and ask Siri. She'll tell you. Learning is you learn something so that you can improve. Wow. Here's what I believe. Everyone can improve. You can improve. I can improve. Everything can be improved. I believe that. Everything. No matter what you're doing, everything can be improved. And I believe that every day has improvement possibilities. Every day. Today is another day where you and I can improve. One of my favorite stories on improvement comes from my friends at Chick-fil-A. Great people. I've had some wonderful training, teaching moments with them. And there was a time, this goes back, maybe 18, 20 years ago, when the Boston market was starting to maybe cut in a little bit to Chick-fil-A's profits and market share. And so the board was talking about the fact that we need to get bigger. And Truett Cathy, the founder, who's now passed away, what an incredible man he was. Truett Cathy looked at the board as they're saying, got to get bigger. And he looked at him and said, don't worry about getting bigger. Just worry about getting better. And trust me, he said, if we get better, the customers will make sure we get bigger. They'll demand that we get bigger. And I thought to myself, he understood the value of improvement. A book that I read really in my high school years that marked me greatly was a book by James Allen. And James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, was the title of the book. He wrote this statement that just has been sealed in my heart for so many years. He said, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're not anxious to improve themselves. Now get the picture. They're anxious to improve their circumstance. Let's get rid of the crisis. Let's get over the crisis. When's the crisis going to be? That's all circumstances, folks. They're anxious to get the crisis gone, fix the crisis, remove the crisis, whatever. Get the crisis out of my life. They're anxious to improve their circumstances. What they're not anxious to do is improve themselves. And so what does he say? He said, because they don't improve themselves, they remain bound. I don't want us to remain bound out of this crisis. I want us to be freed out of that crisis entirely differently than that. So during this crisis, I gave you a challenge, and that is focus on improving yourself more than improving your circumstances. Again, that's why I'm giving you these one words that will maximize you today to prepare you for tomorrow. So am I improving? Am I improving? Am I improving in my humility, adaptability, open-handedness, my discussions with my peers? Am I improving in my questions, my reflections, my curiosity, my testing, my failing, my learning? Am I improving in these areas? I'll just give me a couple more minutes because there's another word I want to introduce to you right now, and that is the word re-enter. It's a great word. Now notice the cycle of success. Test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. Now when do you re-enter? When do you get back in the game? After you've tested, failed, learned, and improved. You know, in America, we just love a tenacious person, and we love a person that's just always in the fight, and they just stay in the game. And, you know, it's kind of like they rise up and they hit an obstacle, and they go back down, and they just keep getting back up, and we just look at them and say, oh, what a tenacious person. Boy, they're never down. They're either up or they're getting up. And let me tell you, this is not a picture of a tenacious person. This is a picture of a stupid person. Let me make a suggestion. While you're down, stay down until you have figured out why you keep getting knocked down. You see, the only time to re-enter the game is when you've learned from your failures and improved on what you've learned. Once I get better, I can get back into the game. And, you know, I just real quickly suggest again that if you want to kind of get into a new game, maybe a new career, if you'll again go to coachwithjohn.com, go to that website, we'll have a little webinar that'll teach you how to kind of get started on the journey and perhaps even, you know, get the skills to be a John Maxwell coach. I would love to have you. Okay. One more word, and I close, and that's prayer. And you may not be a person of faith, and you know me now. You know me. I tell you this all the time. Doesn't ever matter to me. I love you unconditionally, regardless of background, religion. Doesn't matter. Those things are not important to me. The only thing that's important to me is you. I value you. But the serenity prayer is such a terrific prayer for crisis, and as you know, it's used in so many incredible forums where people are trying to improve their life, Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. I mean, it's a great prayer, and I just close with it, and I'll read it to you, and you can just kind of listen along, and it just very simply says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's what I pray for you right now. It's what I pray for myself. Help us to understand the things we cannot change and have the courage to do the things that we can to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm glad you're with me today. My name's John, and I'm your friend.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.